Hey, Ralph.
Hey, how's it going, bro?
Good, dude. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, it is, man. Let me just give me 2 seconds. Is running over to sync in, and we'll be good to go. I'll give the
All
formal
right.
intro, and yeah,
Okay. I scanned your questions and all of it's great, man. We'll just talk about the movie and how it got made. And I love the questions and we'll
sounds
hit it really hard.
excellent. All right. Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Faith, Family, and Friends. I've got my good friend Brent McCorkle on, who co-directed the recent movie, The Jesus Revolution. He also did the soundtrack on that movie, which is actually his forte. Brent, we want to just give people an idea of some of the work that you've done through the years. I think the last time we talked, it was just after you finished directing and writing the screenplay for the movie Unconditional, which is based on true events. Came out in 2012, right, Brent?
That's correct. Yeah, man.
And then I think and we want to talk about how people hook up with other people, but you co-edited and worked on and did the music for Woodlawn, which is a fabulous movie, directed by the Irwin brothers. And that came out, I'm not sure when, 2015, October 2015. And then I Can Only Imagine, once again, working with John and was it Ed Irwin brothers. And that was 2018, a Lionsgate music biodrama. And that was well received, I believe. I enjoyed it, I know. And then, of course, the Jesus Revolution. So I just want to ask you, what made you want to get into film making or the music for doing the music for films? Was it a lifelong dream growing up, or something that God just opened the door? And how did it segue into the faith-based films naturally? How'd that all happen? How did it all work?
Yes. So I was raised in the church. I'm a pastor's kid. And one thing I love about the church so much is there are many traditions in the Christian church that really nurture artists and nurture creativity. And I was one of those kids. I don't know if you're familiar with any of the Malcolm Gladwell literature, but he wants you to get 10,000 hours of reps in to become good at anything. Wow. And I got my 10,000 hours of reps in the church. You know, if you watch shows like American Idol, America's Got Talent, so many of those kids come from church backgrounds. Yes, and I really love that in the Christian tradition. So, but it was interesting because I didn't really realize I was an artist. I had a really strong creative wiring and I was all over the place. And I remember thinking as a little kid, wow, if I could find a job when I'm an adult where I could do stuff with music and drama, I would be really happy. Yeah. But I didn't connect the dots until much later in life. I switched majors 5 times. I was very much adrift. I was married, had a mortgage, had a gaggle of children. Yeah, I was paying my bills and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd loved movies ever since I was a kid. And I was like, wow, I think I really want to direct. And I started making some choices and taking actionable steps towards becoming a film director at that point. I went back to college. That was my 5th major I was studying, and took a bunch of film at Southern Methodist University. And they really set me on a path to, I think, becoming at least a functional filmmaker or somebody who could make a living doing this. And so I started getting jobs working on crews, and on the weekends I would run out with my friends and make these dumb little short movies, you know, and no money. And sometimes I didn't even have the money to rent a camera. I'd have to find somebody that would let me borrow a camera. And so after about 50 shorts, I got noticed. I won some festivals, lost some festivals, but I just kept cranking. I kept grinding. And 50 shorts later, I was noticed by some producers in Nashville that were looking for their next filmmaker. And that's when I got to make Unconditional. So that was my break.
Cool. Wow.
So I moved my family to Nashville and we did that. And from there, the Irwin brothers noticed me, and we both had ties in Nashville. And I ended up helping Andy edit Woodlawn because there were so many action scenes in that movie with all the football in it.
Very much.
He was like me. He had edited everything by himself up to that point, and it was like an action movie. Yeah. And so he sent me the script. I loved it, and I saw that movie definitely needed 2 editors. And so that was my first run with the bros. And Yeah, I mean, we've collaborated on 6 things, I think now. And so I went out and directed this last movie, Jesus Revolution, with John Irwin, one of the brothers, and we had just a great run and got along. And it's a beautiful movie that no one person could take credit for. It was a very, very beautiful cast and crew, and it was definitely raised by a village. And yeah, it's just the best group of people I've ever gotten to.
I'd like to get back into talking about that, how well received I think the first weekend was. But let me ask you this question, a couple of questions. Actually, first of all, who were your influences while you were studying film and growing up in terms of, let's say, soundtrack? Because sometimes the soundtracks can make or break a film. And long after the film is over, we still remember some of the songs in those films that we've enjoyed through the years. So you think of people that did soundtracks, or just the soundtracks that you remember from classic movies of years ago. And then in terms of editing, this is sort of related. That must be a very difficult thing. I write, I try to write for publication. I've published a few things, but going back and taking out the fluff, being able to determine what the fluff is one thing, because you're so tied to it as an artist. Like, oh, I don't want to take that out. How do you do that? So we can talk about that in a moment, but first give us an idea of the influences that inspired you, and maybe even the mentors besides your dad and your family.
Sure. Well, I was a really interesting musical child. I hated reading music. My mom was my piano teacher, and we clashed a lot, and she finally let me go as a student. But she would catch me noodling. She had me practicing on an egg timer, right? And she would come downstairs and catch me noodling, and I would be picking out film scores or TV themes that I had heard instead of practicing my sheet music. And neither one of us knew what was going on, but my brain was wired to play by ear, and I still do. I read music at like a first grade level. But she figured this out about me later, and her and a musical mentor when I was going to a Christian school got me connected with this prodigy piano player that only played by ear, but he could play like Liberace. He would rip, the piano would be on fire when he would be done playing. And I still can't play anywhere near to how good he was, but he was just a prodigy. He was a genius, and he only played by ear, and they got me with him, and I exploded, man. I exploded. Like, I remember there were days my parents would come out of their room and ask me to stop playing piano just because they needed some quiet in the house. I'd be playing for 5 or 6 hours at a time. And my brain exploded, and it just became literally my passion and everything that I wanted to invest my time in. And so that my mentor, his name is Tommy De La Garza and Judy De La Garza, those guys saw, I think, what I was. I didn't even know what I was at the time, and they just got me with the right people, and that was really beautiful. And my mom too. So it was just a very beautiful jump start to my passion as a musician.
So are they still alive? Have they been able to see some of the work that you produced through the years? Or
yes. Yes, when I wrote I Can Only Imagine, I patterned the mentor choir teacher character after Mrs. De La Garza as an homage to her and a thank you. And I brought her to the theater and thanked her in front of everybody. And
it was rewarding. Wow.
It was a beautiful moment. Beautiful moment. And so, yes, so I'd say my biggest muse in soundtrack world is definitely Thomas Newman. He has this amazingly wonderful gift of creating music inside of film scenes where the music doesn't bring any attention to itself. It just makes you feel a certain way. Yeah. So I could defy anyone watching this right now. I was like, hum me something, some theme or some piece of music that Thomas Newman did. Most people, I mean, I don't think there's anybody watching that could do it. But if you watch Finding Nemo, if you watch Shawshank Redemption or The Green Mile or American Beauty or whatever the movie is, you're moved. Like, you're so dialed in, and you just punch into the story, and he just hides like a ghost and just does all this amazing work inside of the scenes. He does scene work with the actors. It's like he's in the scene with you, but you're never distracted. You're never thrown out. You just feel a certain way about it.
That's gotta be the ultimate synergy, to be able to do that without, like you said, overpowering the plot, the characterization of what's going on in the film, because it's not a musical. That's quite a different bird. We just had Dan Postuma with us last week talking about the Confession musical, but and the work that he's doing. But it has to be like strengthening what's already happening and putting you in that kind of mood and being able to shift. That must be a real, maybe difficult, but if, like you say, if your brain's always wired like that, and you know, studied and then encouraged, inspired by people who've done that, it must be amazing.
Yeah, no, you say it exactly right. Your job is not to write great music, it's to support the scene.
Yeah.
So there are people out there that are 20,000 times the musicians I will ever be, but they can't score a picture because they have a chip on their shoulder, or they're making it too musical, and they're like, well, I'm gonna do the greatest music in the world. And suddenly you're not even paying attention to the actors, you're just completely thrown out. And so it's definitely a dark art, and you can't automatically assume because you're some great musical prodigy at Juilliard that you're going to be a good film composer. There's a very strong humility that has to come along with it. Who I'm amazed by are the people like John Williams and stuff, who are prodigies, and their music is so busy and it's manic and it's so cellular, and yet it stays out of the way. I don't know how they do it. It blows my mind. But like, you know, like some of the John Williams stuff is just it's just so big and flat, but somehow he can do it, man. I'm amazed by those guys, because for me, number one, I'm not anywhere near them in musicality, but also I'm so timid. I try to push the least amount of score into something just to support, because I'm so, you know, concerned about getting in the way. And that's the filmmaker in me. It's like it's the music has to support the storytelling and not the other way around. So it takes
like
a rare breed.
Foreground and a background thing. You don't want to make the background the foreground, and yet it needs to support and, like you said, strengthen it. So in terms of editing, again, like with Woodlawn, or even we could segue and transition into talking about the Jesus Revolution now. How difficult is it, or maybe you get used to pulling something? Obviously, there's some pieces that say, oh, that's no way that belongs. But there must be some other portions of editing a piece that, oh, I want to really keep that. Describe that process.
Yeah, man. Part of it is the journey with your ego. So when I first started making short films, you don't realize in editorial, that's your chance to remake your movie entirely and make it 5 times better than it could possibly be. But when you first start, you write your movie, you go out, you tell your actors exactly what to say, you don't let them deviate from it. Then you make your edit exactly what your script was, and you turn it in. And it's a one-dimensional flat plate of the worst it could be.
Yeah.
Because with your actors, you had a chance to make it better. In your edit, you had a chance to make it better. And I would say probably the 4th time is with your scoring, you had a chance to make it better. And so as you age out of your own, I guess your own ego and your own over obsession with your immature voice starting out, you're like, oh, wow. Yeah, this is too long, or this is clumsy, or this has a dragging spot right here. And as you keep going and you grow, I think it's a spiritual growth process, but it's also an intellectual, artistic growth process where, like, you're just like in love with your own voice too much, and you're drinking your own Kool-Aid, and like, you've got to get over that. But I've seen people, man, I've tried to mentor people and coach them up, and some people just get stuck in that. They're full of themselves, and they can't realize that if you re-envision yourself and you open yourself up to notes and criticism, and you're constantly iterating, then your stuff's going to get a lot better. And so Pixar does an amazing job of this. They're just open to tons of criticism and iteration. And so your editorial is a chance for you to really iterate hard and put everything on the chopping block. We are huge proponents of that strategy. John Irwin and I, my editor, John Puckett, Andy Irwin, like, nothing is sacred. So for instance, on Jesus Revolution, me and John's layout of everything that we thought would be good was 3 hours long. So
because it's already like a movie, but not that it's laborious or boring, but 3 hours. Wow.
No, we're not doing that. I don't want to go to a 3-hour movie. Like, you know, I mean, no. So then you're going through the painful, arduous process of, okay, what can go, and how can we compress this? How can we simplify it? And I will say, you know, with the artist ego, I always say, it's like someone puts a revolver in your hand and tells you to pick which finger to blow off. You know, it's like there's not a good choice, right? It's like, okay, well, which one goes? So it's hard, right? It's hard. But at the same time, we just don't hold it precious and sacred. And so when we got to the 3-hour cut, then we had to ask the hard question, okay, what's our greatest 2-hour cut, and what can go, what can get compressed? And it really is an exercise in addition by subtraction. And at that point, you're not beholden to the script. You're not beholden to what the actors did or didn't do. You're just looking for the greatest version of it. And there are hard choices that have to get made. I made some tearful phone calls to some actors on Jesus Revolution that were completely cut out of the movie. And I loved them. I loved what they did. And it was like a heartfelt, hey, this is what happened. This is what we need to do for the movie. I'm sorry, but like, your work was valuable and you did a beautiful job. Yeah. But I'm such a creature of the heart. So I'm going to make those calls and say, hey, I know you guys worked your butt off on this scene, but we had to let it go. And this is why. And really try to give them a heartfelt, not an apology, but just an explanation. And that's how it goes. And you never really know what's going to work or what's not going to work until you get in the edit bay. But I mean, we'll do crazy stuff. I shuffled the deck on scenes. The scenes are completely reordered in some of the places in the movie. John did the same thing, came in and just wholesale, just chopped stuff and said, hey, we should, so it's definitely raised by a village. And I think we did end up getting to a wonderful 2-hour version of this movie that we're all really proud of. But you have to be willing. You have to be willing to let it all go. You gotta be willing.
I'm wondering if part of what inspires you in that editing process is you put part of it by saying dying to the ego and it being a spiritual growth. And I believe that must be true. But in terms of my own experience with writing, you have to be in love with the process, the creative juices that God instills in you. So it's like a basketball player, football player, truly playing for the love of the game. So you got to want to, make a product. If maybe put it on the back burner, you go back to this, oh my word, I can't believe I allowed that to go in, or I wrote that, and it must take thousands of revisions in a sense.
That's correct. So what you find is a lot of artists, again, it's a maturity thing for me, but you're so in love with your first draft of a script and it has 2,000 problems that you can't see, and you need some awareness, And if your ego won't allow you to open yourself up to criticism, you're just going to keep writing bad first drafts and wonder why your stuff doesn't get made. And so you're exactly right, man. It really is. It is for love of the game. And what I would pitch, and it's just the drum that we bang, is you have to open yourself up to the process, right? Like if you think your free throw style is perfect and your coach is saying, hey, you're missing 2/3 of your free throws. No, man, I'm doing it right. You can argue with the coach, and you're going to get benched and eventually kicked off the team. Like fix your free throws. So part of our process is just this idea that iron sharpens iron. And when you present your material, it's going to get picked on. I always say it's like in Jurassic Park when the Velociraptors test the fences. The fences need to hold. And if they don't, let them break. Because you don't want the Velociraptors getting out and eating all the people, in the park. So let everything be tested and vetted. And part of your process should be this idea that you iterate through. And so I always tell people, as a writer, my first drafts are terrible. They're bloated. They're all over the place. It's stream of consciousnness. And it's generally, I get my first draft out and then I ask for help. And then people will give me notes and be like, yeah, bro, this is just this side mission. I don't know that. I know that means something to you, but it does nothing for the story. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Let's let it go. So what I always tell people is I'm an okay writer, but I'm a great writer over time. So at revision 8, when all my friends have helped me and all my trusted peers have helped me, like hone this thing in, and I'm on my revision 8 because I've opened myself up to all these amazing voices and criticism and stuff like that. My stuff is like solid, but like, it's almost like if I was on my own, just going with revision 1, it wouldn't be nearly as strong. So I find safety and a boost, with my people helping me become the best version of myself as a writer or as an editor, as a composer, as a director. But it takes a humility, because it's not fun. It's not fun when you get picked on, or like it's your favorite thing, your first draft. Yeah, that's got to go. And you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
But I do listen. I think it's definitely a function of listening and compromising and being open to, again, the iterative process of the thing.
Let's talk about how you guys initially got in touch with, or who got in touch with who, in terms of Greg Laurie's book, and whose idea was it to bring it to the film? Did he contact you? Did you guys, one of you had read the book and knew the story, of course, as many of us do, with how the Lord Spirit came in amongst the hippie movement back in the early 70s. And what a truly great movement in our country at the time. Ranks right up there with, some people have said, one of the great revivals of our nation that we've experienced. We need another one. And we'll segue into talking about that and the timing of that, which was definitely a God thing. So did you guys contact Greg, or did he contact you? Or?
Yeah. I'll brag on my co-director, John Irwin. It's a really cool story. So John found the psychedelic Jesus cover on Time magazine in 1971. And he's like, what is this? What is this? This is crazy. He couldn't find the digital archive online. And he ended up ordering a collector's edition copy off of eBay for $150. And when he opened it up, it was a 10-page article that was a movie. And he came into work the next day and said, guys, this is the movie. And I believe we Easter egged John Irwin's copy in the movie at the end of the film. I think it was actually John's copy that we used in the movie.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
But in the process of all this, he discovered that during our research for Woodlawn. And at the time of Woodlawn too, he also developed a friendship with Greg Laurie.
Mm-hmm.
And he started talking to Greg about wanting to do a movie about the Jesus movement, and Chuck and Lonnie. And Greg goes, hey man, I was at that church. I was one of the teenagers at that church. And John's mind was blown. He was like, no, that's crazy. So the more they talked, he realized that Greg Laurie would be a great ride-along character to take us through all of this, and we'd be able to create a younger generational love story in the middle of all this. So actually the book was written when John and Greg were deciding that they wanted to pursue this movie, and Greg signed on to allow us to do this part of his life story and everything. And so the book was written as a stepping stone to us getting to the movie.
Wow.
And so it really, the book was an exercise in Greg and Kathy getting all of their stories out. And we spent a couple 10-hour days, I believe, interviewing them and getting all the stories. And then that became the book, which they, obviously data mined for tons of stuff in the script, as well as, countless hundreds of hours of research that we did, me and John Irwin did for the script as well. So yeah, it was definitely a part of this future idea for the movie coming to be.
Now you guys had to put that on the back burner because when COVID hit, and how frustrating was that?
That was thank you for that question. Yeah, so when I Can Only Imagine hit, John wanted to do Jesus Revolution immediately after, but Lionsgate wanted to do other titles, so it got backburnered. Then that was the first time it went away. And then John Gunn and John Irwin wrote this amazing script, and John Gunn wanted to direct it as one of their screenwriters. And so it was slated to go. It was cast. They were already buying wardrobe. They were going to shoot the entire thing in LA.
Yep.
They had props. They were locking locations. I mean, it was full go. And then the pandemic hit, and it was completely shut down. It was canned, just completely backburnered. And then when the economy and we started coming out of COVID and all that, there was renewed interest. John Gunn had moved on to a different project, and John Irwin at the time decided he really wanted to do it, and he loves collaborating and having co-directors. So I was available at the time. So the third time's a charm, and I feel really I have a lot of humility and gratitude, because for me, like selfishly, right, like the third time allowed me to be a part of it. And I know the movie's different for sure because I worked on it, and also the questions you're getting ready to get to. I think maybe this story had been guided as far as a delay in the timeline to come out in this time. Like we're post COVID. There's still a lot of fear and a lot of hate, a lot of division in our country. And I think this is, I really think it's a beautiful story that calls us all back to love and to acceptance and kindness. And I think beyond the revivals that are happening in college, which is this crazy, thing that I think is more than a coincidence. Beyond that, I think it's just at a very timely cultural moment in America. And I think, yeah, man, this whole thing has just felt really guided to many of us who've worked on this movie for sure.
It's obvious that God's got his hand on it for sure. It did well this last weekend. I know that you on your Facebook page shared some cinematic scores. I think it came in number 4 overall as far as gross sales. So it's how much longer will it be playing? Does it depend upon individual geographic areas or the chain of movie theaters, or how does that work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And this is really an educational piece that we're trying to get out to the world beyond faith movies. Like if you like going to the cinema and going to the movies, I mean, the box office market, the theater chain market is really hurting after COVID.
Yeah.
And it's been a really, really hard thing to even get people to go back to the movies. Top Gun Maverick is what fired the whole box office back up again. And it made us fall in love with, it brought me back, man. I felt like an 8-year-old child. Like it felt like going to the cinema for the first time. That was just such a magical, uplifting, buoyant, spiritually positive movie. I saw it 4 times. And so thank you, Tom Cruise, if you're watching. I doubt you are, but anyway, people thought all these different filmmakers were going to do it, even Spielberg, but it ended up being Tom Cruise that did it and his team at Top Gun. So yeah, man, I just think, I think we're seeing a really cool moment in time where people are getting excited about going to the movies again, and Jesus Revolution is a part of that. And so yeah, to get back to your question, it's supply and demand. So a theater chain it's like cutting a bad stock. They're like, if your movie bombed the first week, they're going to cut you out and they're going to add more screens of whatever is blowing up. Like they're out there to make money. And they're not going to hold on to your title if it's not doing anything. So the demand for Jesus Revolution should carry us pretty far along. And so if there's regional demand, or as you said, market demand in a certain city, and a bunch of people are going, the theaters will just keep it up for a really long time. And we're expecting that to happen. But as interest wanes, or everybody in your market has seen the movie hopefully multiple times, it'll start dropping out, and it'll be a natural drop. But there's no, to answer your question, you don't like pay AMC or Regal to hold your movie in there for a certain amount of time. It's just all driven by how many people want to see your movie. So to the audiences out there, it really is like a democracy. You vote at the box office for the content that you want. And Hollywood gets co-opted into the culture wars a lot as, Satan worshipers or whatever. It's like, no, the devil is not their God, money is. And so if you can play that game and do the math and the calculus, you can actually really win with a very audience driven niche market like the faith market. And so right now you have the faith audience showing up in droves, and it's just really cool because it does great things for faith and for people who might want to tell faith stories in the future, but it's also doing really good things for box office in general, and really revitalizing the box office and getting people excited about going back to movies again,
So it also kind of leads into the question about the nature or the quality of faith movies now, or in series, even like The Chosen, that Dallas has done so good with, and his crew at The Chosen finished in that 3rd season. Do you think there, at this point, there's a glut of quality faith-based films or series like that, or there's enough room for other players to come in, and especially being inspired by your work and the Irwin brothers, and of course, Dallas Jenkins and the crew there? I have a couple friends who won a 3rd place and a 1st place at the film festival, and they were so moved by The Chosen, Kyler and Caleb Cook, that they have launched out, and they're doing a series on the life of David. And they've got a great crowdfunding group, social media. They're just trying to get it all financed now, but really excited about that. But they were in tears watching The Chosen, and they're big into directing, editing. So you think there's a lot of room still left for people who have that imagination and that drive that you had as a youngster, wanting to do that kind of a thing?
Yeah, I want to shout out to Dallas Jenkins because he's making something of actual Hollywood television quality.
Hmm.
And I actually have a very optimistic take on Hollywood. Again, it's easy to demonize them in the culture war, but there are people of faith everywhere, even in Hollywood. And I think you have some of the greatest talents sitting out the faith-based genre just because it hasn't achieved a quality that they're willing to participate in yet. So as the bar keeps getting raised and these movies and shows keep getting better, I think you're going to see some very incredible talent coming out of Hollywood and saying, yeah, I want to do your movie. I mean, John Gunn's last film that's going to come out this year with Lionsgate has Hilary Swank in it. I mean, I don't know. It's like there's going to be more. I mean, she's an Oscar award-winning actress. There's going to be more people signing on to as the scripts get better and they're looking at it going, okay, I saw what these guys did with their cinematography and how they put the film together with the edit and everything and the music. And yeah, okay, I see what it's going to be and I sign on to this. And so I think if you want to do faith adjacent or inspirational, aspirational things, or even tell a mainstream story that has a faith element to it, I think it's the greatest time in cinema to be looking in that direction. And I would say, come one, come all. There's room for everyone. I would just say, keep working on your trade craft and make it excellent because it's also going to get more competitive. And I think it should be. I think if this is my a little bit of my high horse of the drum that I bang. But if you're going to attach God or Jesus or his messages to things, it better be really good,
Exactly. Yes.
And I think oftentimes it goes in the opposite direction. And I think it's really sad. And I think people are embarrassed and as artists and they sit it out. And that becomes a very easy straw man in the culture wars to be like, well, people don't like this movie because it talks about Jesus. Like, no, bro, people don't like this movie because it's bad, so so I think we have to make that distinction, right? It's like I want to work with people and champion people who are striving to climb that mountain of creative excellence. And I personally don't feel like I'm there yet. I have so much to learn and I've been working really hard on my trade craft, and John and Andy have too. And they're great guys to work with because of our camaraderie around becoming better with every project and not really feeling like we've arrived creatively. And I don't think I'll ever feel that way, honestly, but I want to work with people that are like-minded in that way because I think if I keep going and don't get hit by a bus, I will at some point be continuing to work with A-list talent in Hollywood like Kelsey Grammer and others that are of that caliber. And I think
part of it, if I can say this, what we look back on faith-based films, and the two things that I'm sure there are other things, but the characters were two-dimensional. They weren't realistic, three-dimensional, and the message was so preachy that it was almost down your throat. And so it took away. And I think that if we can make the message subtle, it doesn't mean we compromise. Then it becomes a greater thing, and it's almost like a lived life. And I think that's what I'm seeing anyway in the quality of faith-based films that are coming out. That in the past they were too quick to tell the message, and then you didn't see the humanness of the characters. And now a lot of that's changing because of what's being put out there. And I think it's a great thing. When Jesus said, "Be salt and light," he didn't mean just preachers and evangelists, but he meant creative people, filmmakers, artists, writers. And it's not a time to bury our talent like the Dark Ages, but to let the arts come out. And I think it's a wonderful thing what you're doing, with Irwin Brothers doing, Dallas Jenkins, my good friends, the Cook Brothers, Twin Bolt Media, and others just putting their stuff out and saying, here it is, Lord, anoint it and show me how to get it going.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I fought so hard for this movie to keep all politics and religion out of it. I wanted it to be a human story about love and acceptance and belonging. And it's so crazy because it's overt. It's all these really overt Christians talking how normal people would talk, but they are people of faith. But we're not bludgeoning that to death. We're just walking through a very human, universal drama. And in all that, I really think there's a lot of beautiful places to explore faith, but as you say, not turn it into a sermonette, but make it a really compelling piece of entertainment, or at least try to. And so, yeah, man, I appreciate you saying that. And also the salt and light. I think you can become really moralist and very legalistic in a hurry. I think there are, I honestly, there's an A24 film that's up for an Oscar. It's called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And it's this really crazy, wild movie, but there's a scene in it that's the most Christian scene I've ever seen in a movie. But for her to defeat an enemy in the movie, she has to tell them she loves them from her heart. And she actually has to prove that she can love her enemies. I was in tears. I was moved to my core, because you have these people outside the church that are bringing forth these beautiful Christian themes. And so I think salt and light is a very real thing in entertainment. And I think people, again, they, Jesus, I told people, it's like, well, Jesus Revolution, as sweet as it is, as loving as it is, going to get co-opted into the culture wars and the political spectrum on both sides, probably. And I don't like that. I want people to feel the love on it and feel like what it can do to bring people together and bring more love in our societies. So yeah, man, I think there's lots of room for explorations of faith, and even in entertainment. And I know that might not be popular. I think some people out there do want you to preach in your movies, and I'm not in that camp. I want to entertain and thematically raise some cool questions, or maybe talk about some things that are important to me. Steven Spielberg calls them lessons, but Spielberg knows he's got to entertain you first, and then he can leave you with a lesson or something to think about. And he's the master of that. And, I'm a huge fan, and he never preaches, and yet the themes that he brings forth are resonant, and you're thinking about them, you're talking about them after dinner, and you're dreaming about it that night. And so I definitely want to do that with my stuff as well.
So what do you have any projects down the road now, or you're just taking a break and seeing what God brings you?
Yeah, man, I'm taking a break. There's these guys that I really like, and they need a script rewritten. So I'm a wannabe homesteader and farmer. So I live here in Tennessee, and I'm just gonna write on my farm for about 4 months, and I'm so looking forward to it, because we've been grinding so hard on this movie. So I'm gonna be with my goats and my bees and my chickens and my wife and kids, and get some good writing done, and just refuel and pour a lot of just pure creativity into this story. And then over the course of this writing assignment, I will choose the next movie that I want to write and direct. And so I'm sure that'll be announced. But honestly, I really feel like the Irwin brothers and Lionsgate invited me to the prom. So I'll probably do a few more dances with them, because I'm really so grateful to all of them. So I'm sure you'll see my next project, is in some way aligned with Kingdom Story Company and Lionsgate in some way. So,
well, Brent, we've enjoyed having you on. Please, let's stay in touch. Text in, email, whatever on your next project. Usually we like to close our time in prayer, if you don't mind. Pray for you, pray for the movie to continue. And amen. All right.
Thank you.
Lord, thank you so much for Brent's life. Thank you for the legacy of his parents, his family, being raised a preacher's kid, Lord, and the creativity that you put in his heart at a young age, and how that you, Lord, deposited different people, brought them alongside of him, and connected people. And what a beautiful thing it is. Actually, really touched me tonight was just hearing him talking about his relationship with the Irwin brothers and others. And it really is a village, takes a village, and it really speaks to the unity of the body of Christ, and how that we can be a witness in the process of bringing a quality faith-based film to the box office, to theaters. And we pray that you would continue to help it to be seen by thousands, if not millions more people across this nation, that it would speak to their hearts, inspire them to consider the God-shaped hole in their own lives and what you did, because this is a true story. Back in the early 70s, I believe that you want to do it again because you love people. Thank you so much. And give Brent a good, restful time before his next project. We thank you. We praise you. And we pray for this country, Lord, that you would bring another Jesus revolution to our nation. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Ralph. It's so great to hang out. We finally got to connect, man.
I know, it's crazy. You had the flight cancellations and we lost power for 62 hours. And I know this wouldn't have worked on the phone with data. So I'm glad that we waited. And I thank you for adjusting your schedule too.
Oh man, it's so great to connect, man. Anytime, dude. We'll do it. We'll do it again. Many times.
Okay. God bless you, brother.
Thanks again. You too, man. Thank you.
Bye-bye.